And then the timing is just, yeah, like absolutely incredible. It was like the closer my book got to launching, it was like the more troops were amassing on the borders. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this?
Hi friends, this is Read and Write with Natasha podcast. My name is Natasha Tynes and I'm an author and a journalist. In this channel, I talk about the writing life, review books, and interview authors. Hope you enjoy the journey. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. My name is Natasha Tynes, and I'm really excited to have with me author Terri Brown, who is the author of the novel Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. So, this novel is set in Ukraine through the eyes of three generations of Ukrainian women. It's a very timely novel, and I'm really excited to talk about it. But first, a bit about Terri. She was born in Athens, Greece, as an Air Force brat. Her words, not mine. And Terri now calls the North Carolina coast home. In 2020, she and her husband Bruce rode a tandem bicycle across the United States from Astoria, Oregon to Washington, D.C., successfully raising money for Toys for Tots. Terri's debut novel, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, is a historical fiction set in Ukraine. So, Terri, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you and hear from you.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. So, Terri, for those who are watching or listening, can you just give us a brief summary about your novel?
All right. So Sunflowers Beneath the Snow starts in Ukraine in 1973. And it starts out where you see a man who is a rebel. So he is not wanting Ukraine to be a part of Soviet Union anymore. And so he's doing a little bit of spying and things, and he gets caught. And he's pretty much forced to make a decision to leave his country and his family, and that's what he does. And from that point on, what we're watching is his wife and his daughter that he left behind, and then eventually his granddaughter, and how they kind of go through their lives and how this one decision of his really affects them. We also get to see how these three generations of women view Ukraine a little differently. The oldest generation having been the one that was she was left, and then she was forced to figure out how to try to raise her daughter, and she kind of becomes the typical, I'm all for the Soviet party, I'm all in. And then her daughter is much more like her father had been, wanting a free Ukraine. And then the granddaughter has been far enough removed where she never really saw a lot of the hardships, and she's kind of more of the opinion of, I don't know what the big fuss is about, we're free, why are we still talking about this? And then how those three generations can live together and go about their lives and have good relationships. And I tell people it isn't always pretty, but family life really isn't always pretty, and so it can get a little messy, but they always come out of it, and they always come out of it stronger.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the timing of the book. So your book was published
in January,
like a few months ago. So, and a month after that, Russia invades Ukraine. So I want to talk about the timing and. Did you plan it this way?
So I've been asked that, and it's like, man, if I could plan this, then I'm surprised the government hasn't come and gotten me by this point. So I got the idea for this story in 2016. Okay. I wrote it in 2018, and I got it through to a publisher in early 2021, and then it took almost a year to get out. And so no, at the time I wrote it, Russia had invaded Ukraine in 2014. And they're always what I call saber rattling, making little noises here and there, but nothing had happened now. You figure between 2014 and now, really, there hasn't been a whole lot of anything going on. So the answer is no, I had no idea. And then the timing is just, like absolutely incredible. It was like the closer my book got to launching, it was like the more troops were amassing on the borders. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is this?
So, how did that affect the launch of the book? I mean, is it in terms of the feedback you got?
So, yeah, go ahead.
Is it mixed? I mean, I'm just curious how this, because from what I saw, I mean, you tried to be balanced in terms of the views of the Ukrainians, because we noticed that the babushka, the grandmother, was, I have a Russian name, but I don't speak Russian. But that's another story. But we noticed that she was really pro-Soviet Union, at least in the beginning. And you mentioned that in the book. And you also talked about that after the Ukraine got their independence, not everything was, like roses and flowers, that they had issues. So I like that approach. So I thought you did a really good job by kind of balancing the view. So I'm curious about the feedback. How did people perceive this from both sides, from the Russians and the Ukrainians and the US in general,
People
or the
in
whole
general.
world? Yeah.
Right. So I've heard a couple of people who are who do not feel that I should be trying to market this book right now.
Okay.
They feel they have decided that this is the bad timing and I shouldn't be trying to do this. I think they think that maybe I'm trying to profit off of somebody's misfortune. But the truth is that I feel that the book helps people get a better understanding about the relationship between those countries. And it also helps them to form more of a compassionate understanding of what is happening. And to me, whenever you can do something that helps build a compassion toward a people, then that's a good thing. So I've had a few of those. Just about everyone that has read it has told me that it is accurate and that those are the opinions that are there in Ukraine. There are still some people who would love to see more of a Soviet type control again, because then at least they knew where the next meal was coming from, is kind of their feel. And then there are those people who are dead set against it. And so I think that the book is a really good representation of the fact that I think most people in Ukraine want a sovereign Ukraine, but that there are still those leftover from that era that kind of miss, it's they get used to a particular way, and then they kind of just want to keep doing what they've always been doing. I hope when people finish reading it, like I said, that they have more compassion, that they have a better understanding of what's going on. Especially people here in the United States, we're so far removed from what's going on there. I mean, there's the huge ocean between us, and yeah, our gas prices go up, but not a lot else. And so I want people to understand that these are real people who are fighting a real fight. And when you can gain that kind of compassion, then you start thinking about, well, what can I do maybe to help? How can I be part of it? So there's that. And then what's really interesting is that this story has a very tiny sliver of truth to it. Okay, so there's 3 generations, and the youngest generation, her name's Iona in the story. She is actually someone I know who came to the United States for a summer and was unable to go back home because Russia had invaded the Crimean Peninsula, right where her family lived. And so she's never been home since. And in 2016, she told me this amazing story of something that had happened to her in New York City. And I could not believe what she was telling me. And we went back and forth, and it was true. I finally figured out that this is, yes, indeed. And I can't tell you, or it'll ruin the whole story. But I took that little teeny tiny sliver and I wrote 80,000 words of fiction So I could tell that last little sliver that happens in that very last chapter. And I'm keeping in contact with her now. And she has let me know, like what's going on. Her family has been able to get some information out and things. And she came to me 3 days ago and said that she had gotten together a group of artists and that they were raising money to help Ukraine, and they were, part of their proceeds. And then she said, and we need your book. So right now I am donating part of the proceeds of each sale to go toward a Ukrainian foundation that she wants the monies to go to. And so when you get the real life Iona coming to you, your real life character, and she says, I need your help, then that's what you do. You go out and do that. So.
Yeah, amazing. Have you heard from any Russians or other Ukrainians?
I've heard from a few people who are of Ukrainian descent.
Okay.
Who have said that they feel like, it's a good representation. I actually have new friends. They've just moved into my neighborhood who are from Russia. They've lived in the United States for 30 years now. And I think they feel the same way. They feel like it was a good representation. I want people to understand that I don't think this is a Russian thing. It's a Russian government thing. Okay. And there's a difference between Russian people and a Russian government. Their government right now is, it's a power grab, and that's what they're power hungry, and they want to bring back more into Russia to make Russia bigger. And I think that most people understand that, a sovereign nation is sovereign, and that's what we need to try to keep, because if they can do that to Ukraine, then they can do that to Poland. And if they can do that to Poland, well, then they can do that to England. And if they can do that to England, well, they can do that to United States. So you can't say, well, it's okay because it's small, and, you have to be able to say when a nation is sovereign, it stays sovereign. So yeah. I think most people believe that. And then those that don't, well, let's have a good discussion about it. So
what was the reception in terms of the sales of the book? Do you feel that people noticed it more because of the topic, or you still don't know that?
Yeah, I think, it's still really new, and I'm a debut author, so people don't know me. Okay. It's not like I had a following and I was able to just, throw it out there and everybody knows the book. And so I'm still in the really early stages of trying to get my book out there and noticed. The topic has made it easier.
Yeah.
Because more people, they see the book, they understand it's Ukraine, and immediately they're kind of like, ooh, wait a minute, that's kind of, very timely. And so I think it has opened a few doors, at least interest. Well, let me take a look and see if it's something, and then after they read it and they like the book, then immediately then I'm on your podcast. I've been invited to several other podcasts. I've had several people wanting to review me on blogs and things. And I think a lot of it has to do with the topic. Mm-hmm. And
the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast, and I get a lot of requests, through the service that we both connected on, is that I immediately, gravitated towards you because of the topic. And the reason is, the minute, things started escalating in Ukraine, a very good friend of mine, who's actually my neighbor as well, is Ukrainian. And, we've been talking about the issue, for years. And as soon as the issue escalated to this degree, and I told her, and we also have a book club, and she's part of my book club. And I told her, please recommend some literature. I want a fiction. I don't want an academic book. I want like a novel set in Ukraine. And she was like, I don't think there's anything translated into English. I think, and she started thinking, and then I went and I started researching, and I found something set in Russia. And I was like, what's going on? Why? How come there's no books written in English about Ukraine? And then lo and behold, I read an article just today or yesterday in the New York Times how Ukrainian translators are like now scrambling to translate literature into English. So
Right.
immediately when I saw your book, I was like, that's what I've been looking for. I found it. So I'm so glad because I have some followers. I'm not the New York Times or anything like this, but I'm hoping that the readers and the listeners will get to know about this book because it really helped me a lot understand the nuances of it. So my question is, you are a debut author. So what made you want to even write a book in the first place? What inspired? Just the story, and you decided I want to write the story. And have you written before, or this is just your first attempt at doing it?
So I started writing in 2000, but I was writing nonfiction for small businesses. And I had a couple of story ideas, but I was too afraid to try to write them down. You get this horrible fear because, when you're writing nonfiction for businesses, if someone doesn't like your article, it's not a big deal because they probably didn't want to know about, real estate investing or whatever it is that you wrote about. But when you write your characters down and you give them a story and you give them a place, and then they don't like that, it's kind of like someone saying, "Oh, I don't like you," and so it's a lot harder to put out there into the public eye. But in 2016, like I said, I heard that story, but I thought, I don't have what it takes to write it. Like, I don't know what I would do with it. So that just kind of percolated. 2017, I had an opportunity to go to a writer's retreat where you got a whole week to just write. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. But I did not write this story. And I wrote 50,000 words in 1 week.
Oh, wow. Where did you go?
Yes. And
what was the place?
So it's called Weymouth Writers in Residence, and it's in North Carolina. And
Okay.
I mean, it's a great little place. I think for me, that story that I had in my head had been in there so long, it was just bursting to come out. And because I had given myself a whole week where I had nothing else on my plate, no children, no husband, no dog, no laundry, just me and writing. And I just got so much done. The book is not that good. Okay, so the manuscript, it's done. It will probably never go out. And if it does, it won't go out as it is. It's going to have a lot of editing. But it was the first time that I ever wrote something of that length. And I thought, you know what? I can do that. So I wrote another one. And that one was a little better. I learned a little from the first one. And so then I wrote another one. And so the one that is out now, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, is actually my fifth.
Oh, wow.
But it's the first one that I felt had the kind of depth that needed. Like my first one that I wrote, my main character was perfect. She had no flaws. She was better than Superwoman. This woman, everything that she went through and did it better than anyone you've ever met in your entire life. And I think it's because I loved her so much I couldn't let her fail.
Yeah. But in reality, she doesn't exist,
No. And so when you read it, it's a little bit flat because people aren't that way. And when you love a character, you think about some of the favorite characters you've ever read in books. And the reason you like them is because you can relate to them. And you can relate to them not because they're perfect, because we don't like those people.
Yeah.
So you relate to them because you can see something of yourself in them. And so that first character, like I said, if that book ever goes anywhere, I've got to go back and help my character be real, because she's perfect. In the second one that I wrote, I really learned a lot about the fact that I have a very bad tendency to just tell people she is angry. And you've got to show it,
not tell.
Right, and let your readers understand that your character is angry based on the things that they're doing and feeling and saying. And I wasn't very good at that at first. And so, my first couple are just a lot of tell. And you just learn. The only way that you can learn to write is to write.
Yeah, and I also noticed that, since it's a historical fiction, there's a lot of research done. So I'm curious to know, what was your research like? Did you go to Ukraine? How did you get the nuances of life there? Like when they were queuing for bread and, what they were dressed like, the sunflowers, the east and west, like all of these nuances. How did you get that? I'm you're really curious to know.
So, no, I've never been to Ukraine.
Okay.
And people are so stunned when they find that out. In fact, I've been asked a lot of times, aren't you supposed to write about things you know about? And yes. And if you think about it, my book, though set in Ukraine, is really about people. And I feel like I know people. I understand people and emotions. And so that's what I wrote about. Then in terms of Ukraine, I always tell people you start out really big. So you just do like an overview. So you get on something, like an encyclopedia type articles, and you find out what was going on.
Okay.
Like not, my book started in 1973, but I started my research back about 1900, because what happened in 1973 didn't happen out of nothing. So if you're going to start here, you kind of have to know, like, how did we get to this place? And then I just kept reading through until I had a very broad understanding of like the geopolitical stuff that was going on and who was in power when, and when did that start to change. And I knew that in my story, I needed to have my character be some kind of a rebel. And that's what was going to remove him from Ukraine. And so I just started doing research until I found out that in the early 70s, there was a really big rebellious push going on. And a lot of people were whisked out of Ukraine because of being involved in, this different spying, yes, but not spying like, the movie type spying, but, bits and pieces of information and that kind of thing. And so that's why I put him in that time period. And it was like, that's going to fit. That'll fit perfectly. And that way I can move him on out. And then as I went through, it would be like, okay, so now maybe we're in 1981, and I look up 1981 and I look up Ukraine, and I try to find out, what can I find out? What kinds of things were going on? And then maybe something would catch my eye and I would think, oh, I could use that. And that would help me move the story to this next place. And in terms of like everyday life, because it's historical fiction, but just barely. And there are still people who lived it. And so true. I just got onto some of these, message board type places and put out there, hey, I'm looking to talk to people who ever lived in a Soviet bloc country.
Okay.
And I asked them, what was your everyday life like? And so I don't have any one, like, it's not like I used anybody's words, but you hear from 10, 15 people who start telling you what it was like. And you start to get kind of a good feeling of, oh, so I could have my character doing this and this would make sense. And I could have my character doing this. And
so, like, for example, describing the apartment, like she had no furniture, like only one chair, and how they had one bedroom. And for me also, the idea of that they give them apartments and then they take them away when the circumstances change. I mean, these were like really fascinating stuff that,
and most of that is really easy to find. A little bit of research about the Soviet Union and how their social system worked. And a lot of what I found for the social system was not specific to Ukraine. It was kind of a Soviet Union in general. Yeah. And so you can say, well, if that's happening overall, then it's going to be happening in Ukraine. Yeah. So I just did a lot of research on the general social, like, how did those programs work? And that's what I found was, people were given rations, and they were given their housing, and they were even given work, often based on like family size and status and different things, and that's what determined how much milk they were going to get that day.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
got to the point where, even though maybe you were supposed to get milk that day, they didn't have enough milk, and so you stood in line and you may not get what it is that was on your ticket. And so I made sure that my people experienced some days like that too, where they weren't lucky enough to get bread or milk that day.
And you used some Ukrainian in the book. So how did you get that language? Like Google Translate, or?
I did do Google Translate to start, in order to get my word in, and then I checked it with my friend.
Okay.
And I just said, is this word really the right word that I want? And most of the time it was, because I wasn't doing sentences. I was doing one word.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty, Google Translate's pretty good with word to word. Sentences, they're not quite as good at. And I think the only time that I really used sentences was, I did the lyrics to the Soviet
national anthem,
the national anthem, and that was written out. I just found that written out, and I just used it as it was, and made an assumption that it came from a site that I trusted, that they knew what they were talking about, and I just did that. And then right next to it they had the in English, so that you knew what it was saying. So I did that. And you have to be very careful when you're doing lyrics to songs, but it was public information, so it wasn't like a David Bowie song or something.
And so I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here.
Yes.
And so there is this movement that I personally do not agree with, but since I'm playing the devil's advocate, it's called own voices. So the idea of own voices, like someone from that culture should write about the culture. So have you heard anyone saying, what, a Ukrainian born on Ukraine should have written the book, not an American born in the US? As I said, I don't agree with this movement. I think authors should write whatever they want to. The sky is the limit. But this kind of movement has been gaining ground lately, and even publishers, at least traditional publishers, independent publishers are more kind of open to other ideas, but traditional publishers are really latching onto the idea of own voices. Have you encountered some of that?
I haven't had anyone say anything to me about it in this context. I have been in book lectures and things where it has come up before, and authors are kind of arguing it back and forth. My own feeling is I think that as long as an author is not doing anything to push along a negative stereotype, that I don't have a problem with it. Because if you can only write about, we'll use something other than Ukraine, autism, and you can only write about a character with autism if you have autism, that really limits who can write. And if you can only write a woman character if you're a woman, because let's put it this way, with own voices, that means that as a woman, I shouldn't be able to write any male characters.
Yeah. Well, but own voices is, it doesn't go both ways. Like they kind of signed, like you as a minority, because like you're a woman, you would side with you, not with the. So that's why I don't agree with it, because I think it should go both ways. But me
too. And so I think that's where. But no, in general, no one has said that yet. I expect that they will, as the book gets more known. You're always going to have people who don't agree with something that you've written, and that's okay. Yeah, I think that's the power of literature, is to be able to have people who can see things from different sides, and let's go ahead and have a good debate about it. That's fine with me, because I feel that what I did was I tried to stay as true as possible to the feelings of people who lived there. I've talked with people who have lived there, who've read the book, who feel that I did a good job of that. And I don't feel like I promoted any negative stereotypes. And even when I had people who were doing negative stereotypical things, I had them come up with an aha moment where they realized, oh, like Sandra, who says or not like Sandra, Danya, who says that, he hates Russians. And then he has that scene where he finds out that a friend of his is Russian and he didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And he's hurt their feelings by making this horrible comment. And then he has to rethink everything. And he does. And he comes up with, oh, well, I guess not all Russians are bad. I don't care for the Russian government. I mean, and so I think that as long as an author is staying true to what they know, I think an author should be allowed to write what they want to write.
Yeah.
And then if the reading public doesn't want to read it, well, that's their right too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm going to switch gears now and talk about the technicalities and more, because, like some authors listen to this podcast, so I always like to help them during their journey. So by listening to published authors like yourself. So what was your journey like in terms of finding the publisher? Did you try to find an agent first? Do you have an agent? And how did you end up with a publisher? And did you want an independent publisher, or you would rather go with what do you call them, the big five, which is many authors dream of that. And as I said, they're very selective, and it's not only selective, but it also depends on the market. So it's kind of like a crapshoot.
It is.
So in terms of your journey to publication, I'd like to hear from you how you got there.
Okay, so I think like most authors, I started in that place where I really did want to be in, the big 4 or 5, whatever it is now. They keep merging. I don't even remember. Yeah. But that's what I thought I wanted. And I think I wanted it because that would mean that I was somehow more successful or whatever. And I started querying, and you get rejection letter after rejection letter when you're lucky enough to even get a rejection letter. And I found that really disappointing. So I considered doing some self-publishing, and really was going to go that way. I mean, that's what I had decided. And then I was in a book club where we read a local author who was self-published, and I won't say who it was, but I did not care for the book. And I felt that it was not well written, and I felt that it was not well edited. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to self-publish, because I don't want this to be my experience. Okay. I don't want to have written something that I think is good and then have it go out into the world and it not be what it needs to be. So then I was crushed again, because I didn't know where I was, now what am I supposed to do? So I started querying again, and I found Atmosphere Press, and they are a hybrid publisher. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me to explain what they are. It's almost like you get the best of both worlds. I have a publisher. They helped me with the cover. I had an editor. I had someone who did the proofreading. I had someone who knows how to do all of the stuff about getting the book onto Amazon and all of those pieces that I didn't know what I should be doing. On the other hand, I kept 100% of the rights to my book. And when I worked with the editor, I did not have to accept what the editor told me. I got to make the final decision. When you go with the big 5 or 4, if they tell you you have to change your ending, you have to change your ending. I also have a friend who just the other day said to me, there's an event coming up and I'm really excited, and we're going to, be able to meet with the public, and there's a big group of authors getting together, and we can sell our books there and talk with the different people, and they're giving each one of us a period of time where we can talk about our book and whatnot. And so I told her about it, and she said, oh, I would love to, but I can't. I'm not allowed to sell my own books. because she's with a publisher that doesn't allow her to do that. And I thought, oh, I would hate that. So, I mean, I would.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean
Yeah.
you can't sell your own books? If they're yours, why can't you sell them? But the truth is that they're not hers anymore.
Yeah.
So for me, and I'm not saying, I think everybody has to find what feels right for them. For me, this hybrid publisher was the best thing because it gave me the ability to have the professionalism that I felt I was going to miss out on as a self-published, without getting into the you can't do this and you can't do that and you have to do this and you have to do that. So I was able to kind of keep creative control of my book. So for me, that's kind of been the best of both worlds. Is I got a little of what I liked from the one and a little of what I liked from the other, and I didn't get some of the other things on either side.
Would you consider like contacting the Ukrainian embassy and having an event there?
Right now, no way. I wouldn't go to Ukraine. You couldn't pay me enough money to go right now.
No, the Ukrainian embassy in DC.
Oh, yes, I would. That would be cool. No, I thought you meant over, and it was like, no, I'm not going anywhere near Ukraine right now.
No, I'm just thinking, as part, because they've been very active, the community here. And I was thinking of, there's some
I think
way
that's a fantastic idea. In fact, as soon as we get off here, I'm writing that down. I'm going to find out who to contact.
Yeah, I mean, it's just some ideas. We authors always help each other out. That's what I love about the
In fact, I tease everybody and I say, I think that I would love for this to be like an Oprah book club book. So if anyone out there knows Oprah and a way for me to get to know her, you just contact me right away. So
yeah, I mean, and for me, like the podcast, I really love talking to debut authors and self-published authors because I mean, when I first published my first book, it was a small publisher, and my second book I'm gonna self-publish. But I feel that like there's a lot of stigma around that, and they do not get the attention they deserve.
I agree.
And like this book is like really well written. I mean,
Thank you.
fact that and I'm not saying that lightly because I read a lot and that's what I do for a living. So the fact that a traditional publisher did not pick that tells you something about the market, that it's not you. Was it Haruki Murakami who said that if you end up reading the books that everyone is reading, you end up thinking like everyone. And
Yes.
And the idea is that we only read the bestsellers or the books that are in the New York Times bestseller. We limit ourselves to what the market wants us to read, and the market's also influenced by politics, by cultural wars and other stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of ranting here.
But see, I agree completely. And I want to make sure that everyone understands I'm not against self-publishing. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've considered it for potentially my second book. I'm not sure how I'm going. I just know that for me, at least in this experience, especially as a debut, totally unaware of the other part of book writing. I understood writing and I didn't understand what to do after that. Having someone there to kind of guide and hold my hand has been very, very helpful to me. But on the other hand, I completely understand anyone who wishes to self-publish.
Yeah.
I just was afraid that maybe I needed more professional help beforehand and I didn't know where to get it. Mm-hmm. And so now though, I'm a little more connected and I might know where to get it and not have, so yeah. I just think that it really depends on the author, and it depends a lot on what are they looking for? What do they hope is going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I was talking with an author the other day, and she and her husband, they both co-write fantasy novels, and that's what they do for a living. and she's telling me she is self-published. They're self-publishing, and she said that she had the publisher, but she stopped because she's making more money self-publishing now than
Right.
using a publisher. So I'm seeing more and more people going to self-publishing, and it's just people cutting the gatekeepers as well for many reasons. So yeah,
Well,
it's
one of
it's
the good things about Atmosphere Press is you do not have to have an agent. So that got rid of that whole, I'm talking to the people in the publishing company directly, and they're talking to me.
yeah.
And I like that aspect as well. And so, like I said, I think this is kind of almost a glorified self-publish.
Yeah.
I do have a publisher, but I like having the control of my book, because I wrote it the way I wrote it for a reason. And yes, I'm willing to listen to an editor if they've got good suggestions for me that is going to make my book stronger and my writing stronger. I want to hear about that. And this book in particular, they recommended that I add a few more chapters on the character Alexandro, which I did not have. And they were right. It made the book a lot stronger. And I'm glad I listened to that and added those in, because it really helped. It really helped the book. On the other hand, they did make a few suggestions about things that I did not agree with. And I didn't have to listen. And it was like, no, I do not agree. And I wrote it this way for a reason. For instance, when Iona comes to North Carolina and she has trouble with the language, my editor did not like that. She did not want her to have trouble with the language. She said it made her sound stupid. And I said, I don't think it makes her sound stupid. I think it shows the real issues of someone who speaks English but learned it from a textbook in a school system in Ukraine, and now they're here and it doesn't translate well, especially if you found yourself in southern United States with a southern accent, which is difficult. I grew up in Ohio, and when I moved to North Carolina, I had trouble with the English language, and I was from here. And so, I wanted that in there, and they were really against it, and they didn't push hard, but they pushed. They really wanted me to know, but I felt very strongly it needed to be in there. So I think I really liked having that ability to say, I put it in there for a reason. I know what the reason is, and I understand that you're telling me that some people may be offended by that. Thank you for letting me know.
Well, I mean, I thought it was accurate. I mean, I didn't grow up speaking English. I learned it from textbooks. So, in my case, there were movies to help with that, like American movies and stuff. But I guess growing up in Ukraine, it might be different. And yeah, I mean, it sounded pretty natural to me, at least as someone who did not grow up speaking English. And so,
Right.
so I think you did a good job with
Thank you.
that. So now I want to talk about your future plans. So now I know you're now really busy with promoting the book. I know how it is. You're still like high from all the excitement and the feedback and like the Instagram stories and all of that stuff that come your way. And at the same, like one of the mistakes that I made is like I was so into the first book that I stopped writing for a while and then I realized, you know what? I have to move on. And
you have to have something else
yeah. And I was so sucked into it that I kind of neglected the fact that you have to continue writing. And I struggled a bit with that. So like always my advice is just, you finished the first one, what's next?
Right.
If that's like you really wanna continue doing. So what's next for you?
So I actually have another one already written, which is really good. And I had both of them pretty much written when I turned Sunflowers Beneath the Snow in. So luckily I've got this other one sitting there pretty much ready to go. I mean, it still needs editing. I haven't put it through to my editor yet, but I edited it again based on what I was told about sunflowers.
Okay.
So I think that this editing will be a lot less painful. It'll be more painless, less painful, because I learned a few things having listened to what they felt the first time, and so I kind of went through and made some changes. And then I have a writer's retreat planned in June. So I have 2 weeks where I'm just going to do nothing but write. I refuse to do any marketing during that period of time. Although I think I do have one podcast scheduled, and I'll keep that, but I'm going to write. So this next book that I have out, it's called An Enemy Like Me, and it is based in World War II. And it is a German American, so a first generation German American who is fighting in the war as an American, and he finds himself in Germany. And he realizes that these are people who just like him, that if this had been any other time, he could have been sitting down to dinner with them. And instead, he's the enemy.
Yeah.
And it's a very kind of poignant, realization about war. And we see this story from his viewpoint, as well as his wife and his 4-year-old child that he left behind to go to war.
So. Have you read The Book Thief?
Yes.
Yeah,
I love that one.
Oh my God, it's so good. And so you would say like your specialty is historical fiction. If you want me like
it is.
To
that's what it is right
to
now.
Label it. Yeah,
that's what it, these two have been that. The first one that I wrote that I said isn't gonna, I can't show it. It's more of a contemporary fiction, and it deals with homelessness. I think that I tend to write more of a just character driven, like it's about the character. And I like historical fiction because it gives me a great backdrop. I really enjoy not having to create, like I would be a terrible science fiction writer because I don't like the world building.
Okay.
The creating that I that's not my strength. I'm a people person, and so I know what to do with people, and then the worlds, it's kind of like, what am I supposed to do with so for me, having historical fiction is great because I'm really good at research, and then I can put my characters that I've developed into these great places. They already exist, and I can already find out about them, and then all I have to do is be able to write it so that you feel like you're there. And I like that a whole lot better than trying to create some place that isn't real or isn't real to me. And it's interesting, I enjoy some science fiction to read, but only if the characters are really well developed. And if they're not, I can't get into it. And I think that's the really interesting thing about books and authors and readers is there's something out there for everyone, and not every book is for everyone. When I've had a few people say, well, I don't think I'd ever read that. That's not my kind of book. And my thought is good to know. Doesn't hurt my feelings at all, because there are books that I don't enjoy. And it doesn't mean that the person didn't write a good book. It just meant that it wasn't my kind of book. And that's okay.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, before we conclude, about your writing habits. How often do you write? Where do you write? And do you believe in writer's block, or what? Just walk me through your writing routine.
So I tried doing a write every morning for an hour.
What time?
Does not work for me, because I don't like, first of all, I really have a hard time with feeling pressured like that. And so I'll sit there, and if nothing is coming to me immediately, then I start to feel like anxious and panicked, and oh my gosh, I only have 45 minutes left and I'm never going to get it written, And then if it happens to be a really good day and now my hour's up, and now I've got other things I'm supposed to be doing, but I want to keep writing because I'm in a groove. So the hour didn't work for me. So then I tried to make it so that I wrote anytime that I wanted, but that I set aside Friday starting at 11 in the morning, and I could write until I felt like I was done on Fridays. And that worked really well for a while, but then eventually, doctor's appointments had to happen and other things. And then there was the 3-day weekends and the fact that I live at the beach. And so the kids want to come visit and they get here on a Friday and, that kind of thing.
I want to come visit.
Yeah, you can, please come visit
Okay.
anytime. And so then I thought, okay, well, maybe I won't do it on a right against a weekend. Maybe I'll try it on a Wednesday. I am apparently not a very structured person. So I write when I feel like it, and I try to write every week. So if it's getting to be Thursday and I haven't written anything yet, I look and I say, okay, I don't have anything going on tomorrow morning, and I'm going to set that aside. That seems to work better for me than this rigid, planned. And I know for other people it works. Oh, I've been told, oh no, it's wonderful once you get into the groove. And I can't seem to get into the groove. I have noticed exactly what you said with being so excited about sunflowers beneath the snow right now, and the marketing that goes into it and the reaching out to people, and it's harder to find the time to sit and write, or to even want to write. Like my mind is whirling in a whole nother direction, and the marketing brain and the writing brain are not the same brain. And so you have to be able to turn off the one and let the other one come on. Which is why I'm really excited that I went ahead and created that 2 weeks of time. So I know I have it coming up, and it makes me feel good to know that I've got that 2 weeks that I can just sit down and I'll have nothing to do but write. Writer's block. I think that writer's block for me, all that means is that I have other things on my mind that are too pressing. And when I can get those off my mind, then I'm able to write again. And so I don't really think it's writer's block as much as it's just life is interfering. And if you can go ahead and clean some of that off your plate, then it gives you the space to write again. If you're worried about, your child maybe is having an issue and you've got that on your mind, and you and your husband have had a little bit of an argument that morning, and those things are top of mind. And it's hard to shove them to the side. But if you can go ahead and get those things kind of straightened out, the writing comes back.
Yeah.
At least for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think people work differently. Like, when I wrote my first novel, I was working full time back then, and I had a baby, and it was just, so like
Crazy.
it was crazy. And I used to wake up at 6 and just write for 1 hour, 6 to 7, and then like commute to DC. And oh my God, it was tough. But I'm glad I'm over that baby period.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been horrible.
Tell me about it. So, we're getting close to the hour here. So, any final thoughts, ideas, things you'd like to say to anyone who's watching or who's listening?
I think that for writers, I would like to say, the best thing that you can do is write. Get out there and write, and then be willing to listen to what other people have to say about it, and use that information to make yourself a better writer. And if you hear something that you really don't like, and you've tried it and it doesn't work for you, it's okay to let it go. Not everybody's opinion is going to work for you. It's okay to try it. And if it doesn't work for you, be true to yourself and say, well, that was a good try, but it's not for me, and push it to the side, and continue being true to yourself. And then for readers, I like what you said about the idea of, try to branch out a little bit. Don't just stick with the New York Times bestseller lists, or the same 12 books that are on, everybody's book club. Look a little further, look a little deeper, see if you can't find something that, I'm not saying something no one has read, but something that is not quite as popular, that maybe will give you a different look.
Yeah.
I just recently put together a list. It's the 12 historical fictions that you don't know that will make you cry. And I did that so that people can get some ideas. There's historical fiction out there that come from very different points of view that are not picked up by those
Mhm.
the big companies. They're not put on the bestseller list, but they're good
Yeah.
and they have a
Yeah.
good viewpoint and it's worth reading.
Yeah.
So yeah, and if anyone wants that list, they can just go to my website. I can get it there.
Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and for anyone who's wants to know more about Terri, they can go to her website. Also, make sure to check out her book, "Sunflowers Beneath the Snow." It's available on Amazon as a Kindle and as also a print. Is it an Audible or not yet?
No, it's not an Audible yet. I'm hoping maybe. That's just another huge, ginormous project that I haven't had even a chance to begin to look into yet.
Well, hopefully, maybe soon you'll have it. And best of luck with everything. And
Thank you so much.
Of course, and let's stay in touch. And thank you everyone for watching another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. And till we meet again.